Well, hello, hello, hello. How are you doing?
I am
How
great.
wonderful, wonderful. How is everybody out there? Welcome and thank you for joining me on Life Matters with Michelle. I am so excited that you all have joined us for episode number 3, and we are excited about our wonderful guests on today. You know, Life Matters, we talk about what matters to you. And so we think we talk about those issues that affect our community. So today, my special guest is none other than Mrs. Nicole Kennedy Green. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I'm so excited about this segment. It's something that I wanted to talk about, particularly since we have found our way. We find ourselves here in this pandemic, and so
Mhm.
this is something I always wanted to talk about. And when I thought about the topic, I thought about you because I've been watching you and following you for quite a while. And just we'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into this interview. So I just want to thank you for coming on in. All of our guests who are watching, who are listening, I will be fielding your questions. Anything that you all send to me, I will be fielding those and I will send them right over to our special guest and see exactly how she's going to answer these questions. But we're going to get right into our interview. Again, I'm talking with Mrs. Nicole Kennedy Green, none other than I call her homeschooler extraordinaire. And our topic on today is homeschooling, a vital option. So let me read a little bit about her bio so y'all can know who this wonderful woman is. She is a self-proclaimed extrovert. She enjoys homeschooling in environments where she and her children have an ample opportunity to share educational and social experiences with other children, with other families. In 2017, she co-founded Bridge Elementary Tutorial Homeschool Ministries, where she currently serves as co-director. See, I've known Nicole for quite a while. I've known her since she was like in high school. So I've watched her grow. So I never doubted the fact that she was going to be great. So I'm excited about that. Widely respected as a dynamic English teacher, Nicole serves her local homeschool community by offering high school courses at a local tutorial serving middle and high school students. In 2020, she expanded her reach and founded Greenhouse Online, which is a platform from which she teaches a variety of high school English courses to high schoolers and adults. I tell you, I can read all of this all over. She is well sought out speaker. She's a worship leader, a trainer, a tutor. She's just amazing. She's a wonderful mother, a wonderful wife. And I'm telling you, you all are in for a real treat. She does her, she teaches parents to get their homeschool journey off to a successful start through her most popular workshop, Homeschool 101. And we're going to talk about that, how to chart the course and enjoy the journey. I'm going to stop talking right now, but we're going to get right into this interview. Again, I am so excited. I have watched Nicole grow up, and she's going to get me for this, but we used to call her Coco. And so she's going to always be Coco to me. But I'm excited, my friend, my sister, to have you on the show. So let's jump right into it. Homeschooling, a
Yeah.
viable option. So let me first ask you, what prompted you or what inspired you to start homeschooling?
Michelle, and thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be with you and your guest today. So, what prompted our family to start homeschooling? It's been 15 years now. This year, we're starting our 15th year. We've graduated one who is going to be a sophomore in college. She starts classes in 2 more weeks.
Wow.
And we have 2 more high schoolers that are still left to go. So ninth and 11th grades. So we've homeschooled all the way through K through 12. And when we started homeschooling, we lived in a small town in the Midwest, and we just moved there. And a neighbor of ours stopped me on the street, and she just said, you all have options, because my daughter was only 3 or 4 at the time. She said, you all have options. Think about the options other than the public schools. At the time, we were in Illinois, and there were some major changes going on in Chicago that caused other cities around, small towns around the state, to have an increase in population. And Varsity was going to be one of those, and the school year wasn't looking good. And so she scared me, right, and made me start thinking about other things. I had a newborn, and I knew we were planning to have more, so I wasn't going right back into the classroom. I remember I was a teacher, Michelle. I wasn't going right back into the classroom yet, so we started to explore other options. And after doing all of that, long story short, we came down to homeschooling was a good choice for us at the time. You know, I had taught kindergarten, so I knew I probably couldn't mess that year up. And we would continue to explore. And as I said, this is year 15. And so the rest is history.
Well, I tell you, and again, I'm going to echo that sentiment. She has always been a teacher as long as I can remember. She was a youth leader, and my son remembers you from when he would go to Sunday church. And so he would talk about Miss Coco. And
Yeah.
so she has always been, you have always been this teacher at heart. And I'm a teacher at heart. I love to teach, even though my full-time job is, an administrative position. I teach 3 classes a week, 2 for a university and 1 Bible study. And so teaching is in my blood. And so you are right along with me. I love it. I love it. I love it. So let me ask you, for those of our parents out here who have been thrust into becoming the teacher, because we both know how difficult it has been for a lot of these parents to segue into parenting and teaching, particularly trying to learn new math and all of the things that we didn't have back in the day. What does it take to get started with homeschooling?
Okay, so the first thing I would start with, just with parents, especially in this time, I think that there's 2 things you have to do first. You have to kind of figure out what kind of homeschooling are you doing, right? So there are lots of buzzwords going around, COVID homeschooling or COVID response homeschooling, pandemic schooling, lots of things people are calling it. And then there's the traditional homeschooling, that people have been doing all along, where they had their kids at home. So I think you get started first of all by determining what you're doing. And when I say that, I mean, is your plan to stay along with your school, the school that your children were in? Are you sticking with that? Or is your, like, even if you're just starting with a kindergartner, is your goal to go back or to go into the school district when it's safe for kids to go to school again? So that's one situation. And then the other situation is, are you making a commitment to be your child's primary educator? Is it your goal to have your children at home where you are pretty much making all the decisions? And the distinction mostly, Michelle, is who's in the driver's seat. Who's making the decisions? If you're sticking with your school district, then your school district is making the decisions. And if you're doing it at home, then you're making all the decisions. And either way, the way to get started, in my opinion, is to count the cost. What will it take for us to do this and do it successfully? And then with that in mind, you have to think, what is the end goal, right? Is the goal to just keep them going until we get to the end of this year and it's safe to go back in? Or is the goal to make sure we have a successful time at it? Not everyone will know their end goal as they start. When we started, like I said, I knew I could teach kindergarten, so we were going to take it 1 year at a time. I didn't know what it would be like having, more children, multiple children on different levels. My oldest and the next one are 3 years apart. What was that going to be? Certainly they wouldn't be in the same grade. So it's a counting the cost situation. And so when I'm talking to parents, I talk to them, just kind of get an idea about where they're going, what their intentions are, so we can then chart their course. So that's the workshop is chart the course, and then because the goal is to enjoy the journey, right? So we can chart their course, we can see where they're going, and then you just set a path. That involves knowing what the legal implications are for your state. That involves, not everyone starts at the kindergarten level, so that involves knowing what the requirements are where you live in terms of courses you have to teach. And then, like, in the higher levels, if you're in high school, it involves thinking about postgraduate plans, right? So if you have a high schooler, you want to start at college or workforce or whatever, military, NCAA sports, whatever that is, and look backwards, and that's how you design. So it's not a cut and dry, easy answer, but I guess the short answer would be chart your course. You think about it, plan it out, and chart the course. Needless to say, Michelle, homeschooling is not something you can just jump into and be successful. It really takes some thought and consideration.
Okay, and you said quite a lot. And I love the fact that you gave us two dynamics, because I listen to some of the people who I work with or people who I know are parents, and they're like, I never knew how hard teachers had it. They just send their children off to school for, 6 hours, 8 hours, however long it is. And then they meet them at the dinner table to do homework, or they send them to their room to do homework. And when you think of it in these terms, looking back to go forward, that is amazing, because a lot of parents are just, I'm trying to get through the day. I want you to just sit in front of your device, do your homework so I can get done, so I can unwind or what have you. And so it's interesting that a lot of parents who didn't like school themselves, or who were not good students themselves, are now thrust into the teacher's seat. Now, and the frustration is so realistic. I see people sending messages here and there saying, oh my God, hats off to these teachers and what have you. And my hat goes off to you as well. My sister, she homeschooled her children. She has 5, but the first 3 she homeschooled up until a point, and then the firstborn, she sent him to high school for his final year. That was the only public school year that he had. And watching her have grace to take these children through all of these different elements. So something that you said about the different levels. So when you have someone who's a first grader and somebody who's a 5th grader, how do you delineate your time with lessons? Are they in separate rooms, or are they at the same table? Walk us through what that looks like when you have children who are on different levels, even if they're on grade apart, but some of them are on different learning levels. Some of them, their comprehensive level is completely opposite of their sibling. So how do you help parents who are trying to navigate the different school levels and learning capabilities and or disabilities?
So that's a great question. So I would say that two things you have to think about. First of all, you don't have the same paradigm. It's not the same concept or idea as a teacher standing in front of a classroom lecturing all day, right? So when you're homeschooling, you're using curricula, whether it is virtual, so it's coming through your computer, and that could be whether you're traditional homeschooling or you're homeschooling through your school district, right? You're using materials that are designed for and written to that child at that level. So even if you have a first grader and a 5th grader who are doing math, they could be doing their math at the same time. Their material is coming from different places and on different levels. Primarily, if you're homeschooling with the school district, then thankfully, I know at least in our area, and I'm hoping it's the same across the country, this would just make it better for the parents. And I think school districts are striving for this. If they have one-to-one technology, which means every student is provided a device, then the goal for that matter, the goal for that kind of situation would just be to make sure that your child, whichever child it is, each child at their level has the materials that they need. So if you're, let's paint a picture here. So if you have let's say we're doing 1st and 5th, right? If you have a first grader who is, using virtual schooling and they have to meet their teacher for math, the first grade child gets on their device and they're meeting their teacher for math. And then your job as a parent is just whatever homework they normally would have done. Parents are not necessarily teaching, so you don't have to worry about that. The goal there would be to make sure everybody has their learning space, and that it's a learning space that's not crowded. So, I talked to a mom recently who was saying, we live in a small apartment. It's never a problem for homework because they just go to their own corners. How are we going to do it with talking and listening? And that's when I tell that mom, headphones are your friend, right? Because then the child can be in their own world with their own device with a headphone. I've seen parents build cubicles around their kids with that 3-sided poster board, really whatever it takes. But remember that the material that the children will be interacting with is already on their level. So you don't have to do the differentiation. With traditional homeschooling, for example, I had at one time, so when my youngest was first started, I had a kindergartner, a 2nd grader, and then a 5th grader, because my kids are 3 and then 2 years apart. And the other thing that was just a blessing to us, although I was administering the curriculum, was that once kids become independent readers, very often with homeschool materials, they can become independent learners. So the idea is to make yourself available. For parents who are working full time, that's going to be the trick. Then we need some strategizing. You have to figure out when can they interact with you. Michele, like professors have office hours. That same thought process. The children know what they have to do. You set up scheduling. Mommy is available from 9 to 11. Let's get up, get on here, ask me as many questions. Let's get it started. I think that this is all going back to scheduling, planning, and setting your home up in a way that it makes the environment conducive for your children's success. So the way you make sure everybody can do what they need to do is remember they don't need you all day, but they do need you sometimes, okay? Even when they're independent, even when you're independent homeschooling apart from the school, they don't need you to be hands-on. You're not lecturing. So it's a whole paradigm shift. And that's what I try to make sure a lot of parents understand. It's not school like you know it. It's not even school like they've known it. It's the whole paradigm shift.
Wow, that is.
You just have to think about it.
I did not know that. I'm thinking, because I'm a professor. I stand in front. Well, I teach virtually now, but
yes,
I do the lecturing, and then I engage and pull out activities and things of that nature on the collegiate level. And so I'm thinking homeschooling is the same paradigm as you stated. I'm thinking that I have to sit there with my children if I'm homeschooling them, and I have to do everything. That is interesting. Thank you for the clarification, because I was really struggling with all of these parents. I was like, they don't know how to teach. They don't know what to do. So it's a blessing, if you will, that there's a curriculum. It's almost like the Abeka curriculum that they used at the school you taught when Jordan was young. And so I'm glad to hear that, because I was struggling, and I'm like, my son will be 27, and I was feeling for these parents, thinking that that they had to sit here day in and day out, not be able to go to work, all of those different things. So that is, I feel better.
And curricula these days, a lot of it is written to the child. So when the children are younger, some of it is, or the majority of it is scripted for the parents. So you don't even have to, even if you have a first grader or a second grader, a kindergartner, you're teaching to read, let's say, for example, if they're already enrolled in the school district, the teacher is going to be teaching them to read. The teacher is going to give them, websites to go on and apps to play and links to hit that'll reinforce reading. But if you're doing the traditional homeschooling and you are the reading teacher, you literally, Michele, honestly, you'll have a book, and one of the most popular phonics and teaching to read curricula on the market today is called Teach Your Child to Read in 100 lessons. Lesson 1, A says you just do it. You do it with them. They hear you. It is scripted, and the children do learn to read within 100 lessons. Hooked on phonics is still a big thing. Homeschoolers use a lot of hooked on phonics. There are many. You named a couple. There are many curricula, and even at the younger students' age, curricula is available that is scripted for the parent. So if any parent is out here who's listening to us today who feels challenged by their inability, I know you're good at whatever you do, but teaching is not it. And that's okay. Teachers, because I couldn't do whatever it is you do. Michele might remember way back, I always brought her stuff to do for me administratively, because that's not my forte. So, everybody is good at what they do. You work well in your area, and this is not your lane. But people who are their curriculum developers and people who do this have created all the materials that you need. You don't have to worry about that. Change the paradigm of what it means to be a teacher. Change the paradigm of what education looks like. Homeschooling can be very, very different.
I love it. You are really broadening because I'm telling you, I was panicked about all of these children that don't get to go to school. 2 questions. One question. Sure. That's coming from our listening audience says, what resources are available for homeschooling a child that has special needs?
Yes. So now that varies widely depending on where you live. So I'm in Maryland, in the DC suburbs, and if you were here, I could point you to a couple of different things. There are co-ops, several of which who are that are going to meet in small, very small, socially distant groups in person, so they can continue to offer the support that they've done, that they have been offering. It depends on whether your child is neurodiverse, special needs. If they have there's groups for dyslexics. There are lots of curricula that are, well, okay, let me not say lots. There are specific curricula that are written to support families who have children with different kinds of special needs. Okay. So, and then one of the things that we deal with in Maryland is that once you withdraw your children, or if you don't enroll them in the school, you lose access to school sponsor services, right? But then in that case, you check with your insurance, you find out where they can be tested, you find out where the therapies are, and if your health insurance can pay for them, and then you have to work it out. That's a major difference, though, Michele, between families that whose kids go to school and families who are traditional homeschooling. If you're virtual schooling with your school district, you should still have access to all they provide. Now, how they're working it out depends on each school district, right? So you have to stay on top of them, continue to advocate with that IEP the same way you would otherwise. 541, I think it is, the same way you would otherwise. But if you're a private, if you're homeschooling independently, then that is incumbent upon the parent. Okay. And when I do consults, we look at what the child needs. We find out, depending on the area that the family lives in, and we just do a deep dive with some research. But I'll tell you, families, you are not the first homeschool family with special needs children, and you are not the only in your area. Somebody else is doing it. I've lived in a lot of places, and I've met a lot of people. I talk to a lot of people on social media. There are a lot of people who are homeschooling special needs children, and so the resources are there. We just need to find them. There are speech, resources. There are occupational therapies. There's all kinds of therapies. And then with regards to curricula, there are curricula written for different special needs. And here's the other challenge you have to remember. In special education classes in school, right? What you have is an educator, a teacher, the paraprofessionals, whatever, who are trained to be able to identify a child's specific need, whether they're reading or they've developed the IEP or whatever, and then they customize the curriculum to that child. That's what that special needs educators and their staff, that's what their job is, right? When you are homeschooling, you have it even easier because you don't have a whole binder full of caseload of however many special ed kids go to that school that are in that class. You just have your one. And then you just narrow down what your child needs. So is your child maybe 12 years old, but reading on a ninth grade, a 9-year-old, a level of the 9-year-old or third grade reading level, then you buy them curriculum that meets your child where they are. Is your child twice exceptional, where they are, way exceptional in some areas and then have some deficiencies in others? I know there are some, I know families where the kids are profoundly dyslexic, but they are profoundly gifted at the same time. And so those families differentiate curriculum by letting them read way up in the high school level, but they use audiobooks because they're dyslexic. Whatever it is, you know what your child's needs are, you get them tested if you need to, and then you can even pick and choose different things that meet their needs. Gone are the days when we get a box in the mail that has every single subject all on the same grade, and you have to use that. No more of that. You still can, but you don't have to. And I would say the vast majority of homeschoolers that I know don't. Most children are reading, working, math, different kinds of things on different levels and have some kind of need one way or the other. But we call them learning styles. They're not all special needs. Sometimes they're just different and you meet their needs. And when you're homeschooling, you just have your 3, your 4, maybe even your 7. You don't have 30. So it's a whole lot easier to concentrate on, hone in, and meet the needs of your individual children.
That's amazing. Actually, someone put in the comments that Nicole Green is the expert, and we are hearing it live here, folks. She is talking about homeschooling being a viable option, and I love the fact that you say it's no longer just school in a box. The child is now getting what he or she needs for their specific needs. It's customizable.
Yes.
And that makes me think about, doing adult learning. we
Yes.
cannot assume that because the person is an adult and they're sitting in a master's level class that I can teach them all the same way. So
Right.
there are some who sit in my class, whether I have 10 or I have 16, that I pay attention, and I'll ask them at the top of the class, how many of you are audio learners?
Right. Right.
Aesthetic learners, how many are visual, how many of you are combo. That way, whatever I'm coming up with, it can stimulate each person so that they
Absolutely.
have value of getting the same thing out of each lesson. And so I
Right.
love the fact that they can customize these lessons or these lesson plans for children. Somebody asked the question, what are the benefits? Well, I think you've already asked that. They asked, what are the benefits of homeschooling your children at COVID? Of course, the benefit is that they're not around, other people getting sick. And even if they're not sick, they're not bringing something home to their own families.
Can I add one other benefit too to that? I think that so the benefit of homeschooling is even if you're, again, virtual schooling at home, but if you decide to take a break from the school district and do it yourself, one of the benefits other than, well, I'll name two if that's okay. Two benefits other than just staying out of the population, right? Staying away from too many people, staying away from the closed quarters, all the things that you'd have to manage if your kids went into the building. Two very important benefits that I don't know if that families always think about is one of them is that you will get to know your child in a way you've never known them before.
Absolutely.
I mean, we really get to know our children when we have to think about how they learn. Like you were saying, Michele, that what they call differentiation in school. School settings, and only 30% of students learn in that sit in the desk and look straight ahead, listen to a teacher talk. So if your child could be one of those other 70, and there's a good chance that they are, right, one of those other 70%, you'll get to know how they learn, you'll get to know their work habits, you'll get to know, really know their attention span. Maybe they're not in a medicated sense need help with attention span, but they're what distracts them. You'll get to know their energy level, all that kind of stuff. So getting to know your children well is one benefit that I think that lots of parents don't understand, but you will learn your children very well. And as a result of that, then the whole family dynamic changes, right? Because learning them and being able to know how they process information and all that will translate into the rest of your family life. Another benefit is, especially if you're bringing your kids home from virtual schooling, and let's say, for example, from traditional school, whether it's public or private, and then you're not going to stay with virtual schooling. Another benefit to homeschooling them is that you can figure out where gaps may be lingering. So maybe your child has been just at the tail end of where their classmates are, kind of lingering up, coming up behind, or maybe they are way ahead and they are the child who's bored, waiting for the teacher to come up with them. Even the differentiation doesn't keep up to them. Your child could be anywhere on that spectrum. You get to see that, and then you get to, I'm going to use the word minister to that, right, Michele? You get to minister to that. You get to let them be accelerated for a while. You get to let them slow down and move at their pace. You get to build into their homeschooling some scaffolding, is the word I like to use, to help them support them where they are. By the same token, they also get a chance to explore some things they never thought of. There's nothing more frustrating for a child for them to be learning. I'm going to use history for an example. Let's say they're learning about history and they come across some event, some person, some place, but the teacher has to move on. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And so then the student has to move on. What if they just wanted to linger right there a little bit? They needed to learn more. They wanted to read more about that. They want to explore that. They want to see how this relates to that. Well, how did this happen here? If the teacher doesn't have time for that and they never come home and say, Mom, I want to learn more about the causes of World War II, you don't know because you're not sitting at home reading about the causes of World War II, but you have time to do documentaries and library visits and go to, virtual museum visits, all of that kind of stuff that kids never get a chance to really deep dive into their interests when they are in school because they're on somebody else's schedule. So I'll say two extra benefits are getting to know your child, and also letting your child be able to go deeper, or even maybe they'll say, okay, that's enough. I don't need to know that much about that thing. And they can just move on away from that. Either way, letting them be able to explore their own interests is another great, great benefit.
That is very key. And again, I know you're talking about homeschooling, but I see that even on the collegiate level, because
Yes.
Sometimes one of my students will ask a question and say, Professor, you're saying this, thus, and so, and I know what my lesson sheet says, what I've written or what I say I'm going to do that day. But if someone wants us to, as you say, deep dive in a particular area, I pause and allow us to do that, because for some people, talking it through or hearing it heard from somebody else's perspective, even if I take an additional 10 minutes, it helps them to link it to or tether it to their understanding from either the last lesson or what we're doing later on in the class. So I love the fact that you stated that at home, the child has an opportunity to tell their parent, hey, this is interesting. And based on their own child's needs and interests, you can take a pause and say, well, let's explore this. Let's see what this is. One of the things that I saw with Jordan, they tried to say that he had ADHD when he was like third, fourth, and fifth grade and wanted to put him on, I said, no, move him to the front in front of the teacher and see what happens. They said, no. I said, no, trust me, move him to the front in front of the teacher. And so they saw the difference. And what we found was that Jordan was bored. Because Jordan has a sharp mind, and it was so amazing even to hear him talk now, like, where do you get this stuff from? But it was because his mind was moving faster than the lessons. And so the teacher wasn't pausing for him to ask the questions. And he said, well, Mom, my teacher doesn't like me, but he won't let me ask a question. So it's important that we as parents, we as, instructors or whatever, to take those pregnant pauses, if I'm allowed to say it that way, to give space for children to ask or to enhance their curiosity. Otherwise, they'll think it's stupid and they'll never address it again. And it could have been something that could have catapulted them into some new area of their own life. You know what I mean?
Right. And imagine the pressure that teachers are under, especially in a public school setting, where they have to teach what they have to teach, because that dreaded test is coming, and somebody is coming to observe their classroom, and they have to get through a certain amount of the curriculum, and they have these standards that are tied to funding for the school and equipment for their classrooms. They have a lot to do. And so, I'm not knocking teachers. I understand what it's like to be in the classroom. And sometimes, Michele, they don't have that time, right? And parents who are busy, the kids been in school all day, you've been working all day, you come home at night, what 2 hours worth of stuff do you have to do tonight? And let's sit down and get that done. And then you have dinner, have a bath, and go to bed. Who has time for that when you don't have time for it? Homeschooling provides us with the opportunity to take the time, right? Even if you're doing virtual schooling and you have to stay on your school district schedule, that 6 hours or 5 hours with their device is a whole lot different than getting up early in the morning, traveling, the time on the playground, the time between classes, all of those extra moments that they spend, the back and forth, all of those extra moments are really wasted time where children can be diving deeper. The time on the school bus, all of that time. And when you have them home, you have more control. And I would even say those moments are more accessible to you, right? To do more with what it is. And maybe your child just is tired. Maybe what they need to do at that time is just chill hard. Like, wait, I have one son who is the hardest chill out. Like, he chills really hard. I don't know what he would have to do if he had to go to school for 6 hours a day, because he needs to unwind and downtime in between subjects. And, I'm sure he would do it, but it's better for him to not have to, I suppose, is what I'm saying.
And that's important that you say that, understanding the physiological needs of the child. Because some people just can't be pushed like that. And so we get a lot of students, regardless of the age, from crawling all the way up to, 70 years old, being able to cater to their physiological needs. If they're tired, if they need that break. I was listening to someone say yesterday that sometimes they have to pause between each one of their activities. And this was just a work person. so that their brain can recharge. They can't do everything back to back to back to back to back. And I subscribe that that's the same way that your son is, or that some children are. And they're so used to being pushed from, class 1, class 2, class 3, take a break, go to recess, and do it all over again. And so sometimes they don't have an opportunity for their brains to regenerate, to be able to filter all of that stuff. The dendrites are still doing what they need to do, and they're like, I didn't capture all of that. And so that is amazing. You also said something about being able to have the wine time. How do they have their socialization? Or when you're doing homeschooling, what do you do for like gym and things of that nature? Now, I know when you're homeschooling and you're not sitting inside of a pandemic, your gym could be that you take them to the park. Your history lesson, you can take them to the museum. But how do you capture those things that separate them briefly from their devices and give them something to do by way of socialization, gym time, playtime? Is there a thing called virtual recess? How does that look? What does it look like?
Okay, so I'm going to tell you that what we're planning for it to look like is still in the let's see if this is going to work stage. Just quite honestly, because we've not done this before, right? But and homeschoolers, we have this saying, we call socialization the S word. Okay, almost like a curse word. We call it the S word because people ask us that all the time. Well, what about socialization? How are your kids socializing? You know what's funny about that, Michelle? They always ask us that in the middle of socializing. We will meet people when we're at a museum field trip and they'll say, you homeschool, what about socialization? And we're standing here with 40 other families and our kids are all over the place and we're trying to get them to be quiet because we're in the Kennedy Center and come get in line. You don't know these kids are homeschooled unless you see all these parents with them, right? And so socialization happens. Now, the pre-pandemic, outside of a pandemic, socialization happens everywhere because nobody stays home. Homeschoolers have to make themselves stay home and do schoolwork. And, you do that as an extension of your family. We are a family of extroverts, except for, the husband, my husband, he's a people person introvert now after being with all of us. But we're out and about. Everything with us is more fun with friends. And so we spend a lot of time in group classes and that kind of stuff. My kids do music lessons. They do art classes outside the house. They do sports they have conditioning and, they go to places. Everybody has, you know how we always say that all you have to do is look for the place that the black dollar is asked for because you want to know who's I was just talking to my sons about this yesterday. We were walking through a mall and they saw an advertisement and it was for some really high-end cologne that you and I would have seen some older Caucasian distinguished gentleman with silver hair on in our day, but now this guy was a rapper, locks with a bandana on his head and gold chains. And I said to them, you see that? They want your money. They don't necessarily want you to wear their cologne, but they do want you to buy it. Same thing with homeschoolers. People are seeing that we are a part of the market. There's lots of money to be made from homeschoolers. And so people are offering all kinds of services. There is actually virtual PE. There is actually virtual music classes. There are virtual music classes. There are virtual art classes. All of that is available these days. People are taking advantage of the opportunity to provide the services that families need. With that said, though, there are still lots of opportunities out and about. So we have to just find them. And again, that's what I do in consulting. I help strategize with parents to help them find them. So I'll give you an example with Bridge Elementary that I founded in 2017. Co-founded. We are starting a program on Fridays that's going to start this fall. We have a location. It's got a great big giant field. Parents are going to be able to bring their children. We're going to do some ball exercises, lots of conditioning, physical conditioning, because having the kids in the house all winter or even through the school year with no physical activity is going to be tough. But nobody wants to go into the dojo and sweat and breathe through masks. That's not what we want to do. So they're going to need some kind of activity. But parents, though, your challenge will be just like everything else I told you. When you're homeschooling, a lot of that is incumbent upon you. So will that, if you're virtual schooling and you're working full time, will that mean that your Saturday now is going to be probably get up early, go grocery shopping, come home, get the kids out of the house, go for a hike, do something outside. Yes, that's exactly what it's going to mean. But it doesn't mean that, remember, we're socially distant, but we're not isolated. Right. So grab a couple friends and go hiking together. They can stand 6 feet apart as they walk through the hiking trails and talk to each other. It doesn't have to be miserable in order for it to be safe. So that's one of my new mantras. You don't have to be miserable in order to stay safe, but you do have to stay safe, right?
This is awesome.
Yeah. There are ways to do it. Definitely ways to do it.
But see, and a lot of people aren't that creative. And you said something about people who are all on this homeschooling thing. So when they're offering like the homeschooling music and the homeschool, is that something they pay for, or is it something that the community just happens to have available? Or how is that accessible? So say, for instance, for the parent who is, new to this, and, again, they're wanting to know how to socialize their children. How do they learn about you said it's incumbent upon them, but I'm guessing there are resources. How do they actually find these particular things? Everybody's not a researcher. Everybody doesn't like to. Some people are just lazy. Tell me where it is. No? I have a perfect place for you to find lots and lots of information. I don't care where you are in the country, because this group is filled with parents from nationwide. It is traditional homeschoolers, then there are some COVID homeschoolers, and then there are some educators, right? All on this page. There's a group on Facebook called Surviving Homeschool. So I didn't give you that pre-show, Michele, because I hadn't thought about it. But Surviving Homeschool. And that group is like 5,500 strong. It's a group, a Facebook group, and lots of homeschoolers are on Facebook. I know a lot of people spend a lot of time on Instagram and on Twitter and that kind of thing. I'm sure you'll find some of us, but we hang out on Facebook because Facebook is just a medium right now by which it facilitates all of our interactions. Surviving Homeschool is the perfect place to find coursework. High schoolers need classes, my English classes, for example, and there's lots of things you can find, but there are people on Surviving Homeschool who are offering everything you need, from PE to nutrition classes to cooking to there's virtual book clubs, and that's a lot of socialization in a book club. Virtual book clubs. There are groups for dads. There are groups for moms. All kinds of resources on Surviving Homeschool. I highly, highly recommend it. And if you get in there and for some reason you find out we're not your people, although you'll find some because there's over 5,000 of us. If you get in there and you find out Surviving Homeschool are not your people, there's 2 things you want to do. Number 1, you scour the group, stay for about a week or 2 to see all the things that we offer. And I'm not a host there, but I've spent a lot of time there. Lots of recurring themes, there's services, there's lots of recurring things going on that you'll see if you stay through a week and maybe check in once a day during the week. But then there are also lots of conversations, and get in on the conversations. Post your questions. Hey, I live in Georgia and I have a 3rd grader and we need art classes, and watch how many answers you get for virtual art classes in Georgia for a 3rd grader. You will see that there are families out here who've been doing it. This Surviving Homeschool started in March, immediately after the pandemic. Quarantines began in March in Maryland, and because the person she lives in DC, the person who started it, and it has grown substantially. So that's my number 1 recommended resource. The second one would be YouTube. Get right on YouTube and put in virtual art classes for kids and see what you get. Or, PE for kids, online PE or virtual PE classes for kids. YouTube is another really good example. And in Surviving Homeschool, you will find people who live in your area who will help consult with you to help you find some stuff. So if nobody's answering your question, which I can't see that happening, you'll run into some people who are experts at it, right? Like me and others who can easily help you find exactly what you need. We have told people, if you build it, others will come. And that same thing I tell the people who need it, come, because it's already been built. You're not the only one. You're not the first one. And then you're going to get really good at it. By October, November, people are going to be asking questions and you have all the answers they need, because that's how it works. Wow. I mean, this is really amazing, Nicole, because my mind is blown. I could probably use this elsewhere as well. You talked about, finding these particular classes or whatever. Again, is this at a cost for the family, or is this not the Facebook group or the
Right.
YouTube, but those
The
who are looking
services.
for someone who's looking to massage their child's musical gifts? Is there a charge for them to find a virtual music class in violin? Or, I mean, do the people who come up with these curricula, are they being charged? I mean, it's okay if they are. I just
I know
want
what
to
you
make sure.
mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a wide range of that. There are some that are, for example, I have a tuition payment that people pay me a tuition for my English classes, but then there are others that varsitytutors.com, I think it is, has a bunch of free classes, and then there are others that are very low cost. There is a group called Outschool, Outschool, and those classes range from $7 a session up to, like maybe $240, $300, something like that for a whole school year. But on YouTube is really, you really find most of what you're looking for is free. And I mean, like, really interacting with the kids and teaching them and helping them follow along. And you'll find a lot of free resources on YouTube. You'll find a lot of free resources or lower cost resources when you get into surviving homeschool. So I think that the answer to your question, Michelle, is it depends on what you're looking for, and what you need to do is just see what's out there and choose. I know for a fact that especially parents who were public school parents were not in the mindset or in the habit, right, of paying for extra things. Art, music, PE, all that kind of stuff was built into the curriculum. So if your child's school does not offer that still with their virtual learning, then you have to access it otherwise. But not everything is at a cost. There are lots of things that are available for free. There are some people who, I'll tell you, will build a class so their child can socialize.
Yeah.
So pods and other little social groups, come on, let's get together and take a virtual. I talked to a mom recently who her goal is a virtual field trip group, right? Because
Wow.
her family was really into field trips, and they were going to homeschool this year anyway, and their whole goal was to go on field trips 2 or 3 times a week. So she's going to miss that because she can't go out to the places, right? The museums and stuff are not as open as they were. You can't go to the potato chip factory and all that kind of stuff anymore. But some of it you can do virtually. So what they're going to do is they're going to get on Zoom together and greet each other like they would if they were standing at the metro getting ready to get on the bus, right? Or getting ready to get on the train together. And they're going to greet each other, say hi, hang out for a few minutes. And then one of the parents will share her screen, and then they'll go to the virtual site and everybody will do the virtual field trip together. Then they'll take that down, how you take the screen down, and then they'll have conversation about it. She's starting a virtual field trip group. She's not charging anybody anything for that because her kids need the interaction. She needs the interaction. That's how she's planning to replace what she would have had if we were able to be out of the house. We have to be separate and we have to be safe, but we don't have to be isolated.
My
Right?
God. This
Yeah.
has been some good stuff. I tell you, this hour is going by so quickly.
Yeah.
I don't want to. I mean, we could stay on this here for hours, but I'm going to call you when we get off this because I have something to ask you offline. It's not a bad thing. I need insight on something real quick.
Okay.
But this has been amazing. But I do know that you have a book.
Oh, yes.
I know that you have written a book. It's called Homeschool 101, Chart the Course, Enjoy the Journey by Nicole Kennedy Green. Tell us a little bit about your book and where we can find it for those who want to purchase it. I don't know if it's released yet, but tell them anyway.
Okay, so it's been released for 2 weeks. I am having the craziest time with my publisher getting them in my hand. We can go on and on about why that's happening with shipping. Okay, but we're not going to do that. But we're having the hardest time with shipping right now. So there are two ways you can get it. You can buy it directly from me, but shipping is delayed. Or you can just buy it directly on Amazon. As long as when you look on Amazon, just make sure you look for Homeschool 101 and put my name and Nicole Green, so that way you can find my particular book. I have a copy of it, Michelle, but it's off camera, so I'm going to reach over here really quick.
Go ahead. We want to see what it looks like. I know it's purple and blue, purple and white, or blue and white.
Blue and green. It's like a blue and green.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can tell. Yeah, that's blue. So it's Homeschool 101. So if you're looking for it on Amazon, this is what you're looking for. Chart the
Okay.
course, enjoy the journey. It has the compass on it because we're charting the course, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I wrote this book after years and years of, well, I'm going to my 15-year homeschooling, but I started teaching this Homeschool 101 workshop a few years ago. And I realized that no matter how many people came to the workshop, and it was always quite well attended, I was not going to be able to get this message into everyone's hands. And it's just something that is in me to do. After 2 or 3 times of teaching the workshop, I identified the fact that this is definitely my message.
Mm-hmm.
I can talk about this in my sleep, and so I went ahead and put it on paper. So other than just the homeschool 101 part, I also talk a lot about legal implications, and we talk about how to get started. We talk about setting a vision and mission statement for your homeschool. We talk about looking ahead to see what the end is going to be. We talk about getting to the end and what does that mean now for a parent who has, made some significant changes in his or her own life so that they could spend the time to homeschool. Chapter 14 is called Labor of Love. We talk about all the work experience that parents have built up and all the skills you've developed as you were teaching your children and facilitating their homeschooling. So I think it's a wonderful resource. And I'll tell you that my goal was, it felt, Michelle, like it was going to be 300 pages. That's how it felt when I was writing it. But I heard several parents say to me they needed a quick, accessible resource. And then so I began to pare it down and understand that I had more than one book in my mind. But I began to pare it down because this is a chart your course book. This is getting families started. And so I made sure that it was accessible. It's under 100 pages. As you can see, the spine is small. It's under 100 pages. It's easily accessible. It's packed full of information, workbook pages. I don't know if you can see this, but lots of places for people to work through, the answers to their questions. What are you going through? What do you need to do? What are the considerations? Where do you need to find this research? What kind of learning style is your child? All of that kind of stuff is in this book. And I'm very excited that it was released at the right time. During my launch a couple of weeks ago, I was telling the people who joined me that I had hoped to release it at the end of last year. My mom got really sick and I didn't get a chance to do that before she went to heaven. But I'm really excited that the Lord's timing was perfect. And releasing it now was absolutely the right time. Parents need this information now. It is available so on Amazon and also on I have a website that's specifically for the book, homeschool101book.com. / new release. And so I know you had that information maybe to put in the show notes, but it's easy. It's really easy to just click there and there's the buy button. And also there is a button there for people who want to connect with me for consulting as well. My Facebook page, I have a Facebook page for consulting. There's an opportunity to purchase the book there. I think we might have taken it down after the launch, but I can put it back up if that's easier for people to get to it. And so that's how you found me, and that's the book. I'm so excited about it too, Michelle. I finally got it all out, so more people than just those who live right here with me can get the information.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, Nicole, I tell you, this has been a wonderful hour. It's gone by entirely too quickly. I promise you it has. I want to thank you for coming on the show. I want to thank all of our guests who have been chiming in, putting out their little comments and things of that nature. I thank God for the well of information that you are, particularly in this pandemic. People are scrambling, they're panicking, but I think you just put a lot of people, including myself, to ease that they don't have to do it alone. There's community, there's a tribe of homeschoolers out there to support and to help build and to strengthen and to make sure that our youth are getting what they need to become the young adults and the adults and to be those who are setting a legacy for everybody who's coming behind them. I want to thank you so much for coming on. I want to tell our guests, join me every week, at Life Matters with Michele. And then you can find me also on YouTube at Life Matters with Michele TV Official. That's Life Matters with Michele TV Official. And I promise you, this has been so good. I mean, Nicole, it's amazing, 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 amazing. All of my friends out there in listening land and watching land, please, please connect with Nicole. You can go to, again, Facebook and just look her up, Nicole Green, Nicole Kennedy Green, and just look her up. Once again, thank you so much, Nicole. This has been amazing. Homeschooling, a viable option. And again, you all can listen to this replay on YouTube and Life Matters with Michele TV Official. Please don't forget to like, to share, and most importantly, subscribe. And if you want to be a guest on the show, just hit me up on my website at www.iam-michele.com. Well, this has been good. Nicole, thank you so much. And again, don't
Thanks for having me.
I'm gonna call you as soon as I hang up. Okay. So
All right.
thank you again, my dear, for being on the show. Well,
Thanks for having me.
I am your host, Michele Irby Johnson, and I want to thank each and every one of you for joining me on Life Matters, because right here we talk about what matters to you. See you next time on Life Matters with Michele.